city hummed with its usual chaos as autumn leaves swirled through the streets of downtown Ashwood, a sprawling urban expanse where glass towers kissed the sky and old brick buildings clung to their history. At the heart of it all stood the Ashwood Public Library, a grand neo-Gothic structure with towering arches and stained glass windows that cast kaleidoscopic light across its marble floors. It was here, amid the quiet rustle of pages and the faint scent of aged paper, that Daniel first saw her. Lydia. Before we jump in, real quick, most of you who enjoy these videos still haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, please take a second to hit that button. It helps with channel growth so much and means more than you know. And if you're already subscribed, thank you. Now, let's begin. Daniel, a 38-year-old architect with a penchant for sketching forgotten corners of the city, had made the library his sanctuary. His marriage to Clara had grown stale over the years, a quiet drift of two people who once burned brightly, but now flickered like a candle in the wind. Clara, a high school teacher with sharp wit and a love for poetry, had been his muse once. But time had dulled their edges, leaving behind routine and unspoken resentments. They still shared a home, a modest apartment 3 blocks from the library, but their conversations had dwindled to logistics: bills, groceries, the occasional "how was your day?" that neither truly cared to answer. Lydia was different. She appeared one crisp October afternoon, her auburn hair catching the light as she browsed the philosophy section. She was younger, perhaps 30, with a quiet elegance that seemed out of place among the library's dusty shelves. She wore a navy blazer over a cream blouse, her movements deliberate as she pulled a book from the shelf, her fingers lingering on its spine. Daniel, seated at a table with his sketchbook, couldn't help but stare. There was something magnetic about her, a gravity that pulled his pencil to paper. He sketched her profile that day, capturing the curve of her jaw, the way her lips parted slightly as she read. Weeks passed, and Lydia became a fixture in his library visits. They never spoke at first, just exchanged fleeting glances, the kind that lingered a heartbeat too long. Daniel told himself it was harmless, an artist's fascination with a subject. But then came the day she dropped her scarf, a soft, emerald green thing that fluttered to the floor near his table. He picked it up, their fingers brushing as he handed it back. Her smile was small but warm, and her voice, when she thanked him, was like velvet. "I'm Lydia," she said, as if testing the waters. "Daniel," he replied, his throat dry. From there, it began a slow unraveling of boundaries. They started with small talk about books, then lingered over coffee in the library's tiny cafe, tucked away in a corner beneath a stained glass window of a knight and dragon. Lydia was a freelance writer, she told him, working on a novel about love and betrayal. She had a way of listening that made Daniel feel seen, her hazel eyes locking onto his, as if every word mattered. He told her about his sketches, his dreams of designing something timeless, and eventually about Clara. Not the details, not the cracks, but enough for Lydia to sense the emptiness. "I think people drift apart when they stop dreaming together," she said one day, stirring her coffee. "Don't you?" He nodded, unsure how to respond. The truth was, he hadn't dreamed with Clara in years. Their meetings grew frequent, a rhythm that synced with the city's pulse. Daniel found excuses to visit the library more often. Research, he told Clara, who barely looked up from her gratting. Lydia began waiting for him, her auburn hair a beacon among the shelves. They'd sit for hours, talking about everything and nothing, their knees brushing under the table, their laughter echoing softly in the quiet space. It was innocent, he told himself, until it was. Shift came on a rainy November evening. The library was nearly empty, the storm outside rattling the windows. Lydia had stayed late, her coat dripping as she joined him at their usual table. She was wearing a burgundy sweater that hugged her frame, and when she leaned closer to show him a passage in her notebook, her perfume, something floral and warm, filled the air. Their hands touched, and neither pulled away. The air thickened, charged with a current neither could deny. "I shouldn't be here," Daniel whispered, more to himself than to her. "But you are," she said, her voice steady. First kiss was tentative, hidden behind a row of encyclopedias no one ever touched. It was brief, a brush of lips that left him dizzy, but it ignited something reckless. They met again the next day, and the next, stealing moments in the library's forgotten corners, the basement stacks, the shadowed alcove near the rare books room. It wasn't just physical, it was the way she saw him, the way she made him feel alive again. Clara faded into the background, a ghost in his peripheral vision. The affair deepened over weeks, a secret woven into the city's fabric. They'd leave the library separately, then meet at a tiny park 2 streets over, a forgotten square with a broken fountain and ivy-covered benches. There, beneath the bare branches of winter trees, they'd kiss until their breath fogged the air, her hands slipping beneath his coat, his tracing the curve of her spine. Daniel knew it was wrong, every touch a betrayal of Clara, but he couldn't stop. Lydia was a flame, and he was the moth, drawn despite the burn. Clara, meanwhile, remained oblivious, or so he thought. She'd always been perceptive, but her days were consumed by lesson plans and parent conferences. She stopped asking about his late returns, stopped noticing the faint scent of perfume on his scarf. Their apartment became a stage for a silent play, each performing their role without breaking character. A turning point came in early December, when the city glittered with holiday lights. Daniel and Lydia had planned a rare evening outside their usual haunts at dinner, at a dimly lit bistro near the library, a place where no one would know them. But as they sat across from each other, her foot brushing his under the table, a shadow fell across the window. Clara stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with recognition. She didn't come inside, just stared, then turned and walked away, her coat flapping in the wind. Daniel's stomach dropped. He mumbled an excuse to Lydia and chased after Clara, the cold air biting his lungs. He found her 3 blocks later, standing beneath a street lamp, tears streaking her face. "How long?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Clara, How long, Daniel?" 2 months, he admitted, the words tasting like ash. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. 2 months, in our city, in our library. He hadn't expected that. "You knew." "I saw you once," she said, "weeks ago. You didn't see me. I was in the balcony, grading papers. I watched you laugh with her, the way you used to laugh with me. I told myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't, was I?" He had no answer. The guilt he'd buried surged to the surface, choking him. Clara wiped her eyes, her hands trembling. "I'm not going to scream or throw things," she said. "I'm not that person, but I need you to know something. I loved you, Daniel. I still do. And you broke that." She walked away, her footsteps echoing on the pavement. He didn't follow. The next day, Lydia was waiting at the library, her expression unreadable. "What happened?" she asked. "She knows," he said simply. Lydia nodded, as if she'd expected it. "What now?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I need time." She didn't argue, didn't press. She just touched his hand, then left, her scarf trailing behind her like a memory. Days turned to weeks. Clara moved out, taking half the furniture and all the poetry books. The apartment felt hollow, a shell of what it had been. Daniel stopped going to the library, unable to face the shelves where it all began. He heard through a mutual friend that Lydia had finished her novel and left Ashwood, chasing a publishing deal in another city. One evening, months later, he found himself back at the library. It was spring now, the air soft with promise. He wandered to their old table, running his fingers over the wood. A book sat there, unattended, a copy of Lydia's novel, freshly published. He opened it, and a note slipped out, written in her familiar scrawl. For Daniel. We were a chapter, not the story. He sat there for hours, reading her words, her betrayal of him woven into fiction. The city moved on outside, indifferent to the echoes of their steps.